Happy Saturday, everyone. It is Exploration Game Podcast. I am obviously going to be talking about something games related. And today I think is going to be a little more serious because it's more of a conversation piece around the games industry, game studios, studio closures, and can games be game studios be a publicly traded entity, or how easy is it for this to be a thing? Because we're seeing a lot of studio closures in the games industry, specifically from major companies such as Netflix, Microsoft. Seeing these closures of studios that they're acquiring or splitting them off, going back independent, or even something like Devolver Digital wanting to cease being a publicly traded company, which is kind of crazy because a lot of times people think, oh, going public, going to be able to make some more money by having this and having investors invest in a company publicly and allowing other individuals like myself invest in them. But I don't think a small studio, and Devolver Digital even kind of says this, small studios can't be public, so, and they can't be a part of a publicly traded system, I think, because we look at Microsoft, who acquired a bajillion independent studios such as Double Fine and South of Midnight's developer. Oh gosh. South of Midnight's developer, Compulsion Games. And that was they're like, we're going to have a bunch of studios and we're going to allow them to make the games they want to make and just focus on that to give content for our streaming service. Netflix, similar situation, where they acquired Night School Studios, who has made Oxenfree and After Party. These big companies are like, hey, let's acquire these small studios, build up our portfolio, and we'll be able to produce a bunch of games. But that's not how it works per se, because the games industry keeps growing. And I don't think that we should be seeing game studios be public, because that's not, it's the games industry really isn't conducive to that, especially if you don't have a large backlog of games. If you look at the current successful studios, they either have a massive backlog or they created such a cult, or I don't want to say a cult following, but they've produced a brand that is recognizable by anyone. For example, Nintendo is a publicly traded company. They are successful because they are one of the most well-known games industry or game studio. They're the most recognized studio within the games industry. Because if you ask any parent, they're going to know about Nintendo. They just do. They'll say, oh, is that a Nintendo system? Was that a Game Boy? Is that a DS? People just know Nintendo. Nintendo has brand recognition like no other. And similar to Sony, Sony has over time developed a brand that people know. People know what a PlayStation is. They've cultivated this brand and people know what that is. So they can be a part of these larger corporations or be a corporation that's publicly traded and not have issues. Versus Microsoft has always, I feel like Microsoft has always struggled to define what Xbox is, especially in the recent years where they've struggled to stick with one branding. And Netflix is trying to buy their way into the games industry by just saying, hey, we're going to acquire Night School Studio and try to have them produce games for us, because they're trying to expand into it. It just doesn't work. They're realizing, maybe this is a lot more money. This isn't going to give us the shareholder value that we're looking for, which I think is an important piece, that there's a difference between a publicly traded company producing games and a private company producing games. Because a publicly traded company has a fiduciary responsibility, has a requirement to show that they are increasing profits, that they are making more money over time. And unfortunately, video games just really aren't made for that because it takes so long to produce a video game. A video game is a work of art, in my opinion. I think that video games are a work of art. They are a medium for people to, how do I say this? They're a medium for people to express themselves, to experience a story, no different than a book. A little different than a book, but in the same vein as you're sitting down to read a book for the story, for the art that is being created, or a movie where people are trying to tell a story, is a medium that you're trying to interact with and experience. And I think that is a big reason, like those are relatively easier, I think, to produce. You either don't have as many people involved with the process, or in a movie or TV show, you can run into issues. Obviously, anything you can run into issues. Look at um, the from the TV perspective, if we look at God of War, God of War is running into issues, or George R.R. Martin's A Song of Fire and Ice, the Game of Thrones series that is basically never going to be finished. You can run into issues with single individuals, but far fewer instances of that versus a video game, which is going to take you 4 years to develop if it's a big game. Because if you're at a Microsoft, a Sony, or a Nintendo, you're probably going to take some time, and it's going to take a longer stretch to make a game, which means that there's more likelihood of it having issues. A movie could be in production for a year and then come out and make gangbusters. Which brings me to the point of individual studios, small studios, I think are going to be better in the long run, because when you're an individual studio, obviously you need to make money. At the end of the day, if you're a business, if you're not making money, you're going to go out of business. If you can't pay your bills, you can't pay your employees. If you are a sole proprietor and you're making a game by yourself, if you aren't making money to like make a living to live off of, what are you going to do? We need money to live. Companies need money to function. There's overhead costs that you have to cover. And in a private company, you can focus on, hey, okay, we need to make sure that we are making enough money to pay the employees, cover our overhead. And if we have a long-term strategy of growing bigger, if that is what you want, then we need to focus on that. If we want to make bigger experiences, we have to make more money. But you don't have to show, hey, look, we made 10% more profit this year than last year. Now, 10% is a lot. Just throw a number out there. But that's the concept of publicly traded companies. They don't just have, okay, we need to pay individuals. We have our other overhead costs, whether that be license, electric, buildings that you own. You have all these aspects, and then you still have to show that you're making a profit and that profit is going up year over year. And you meeting the expectations of what other companies of your size in your industry, in the industry at large, are doing. Versus, again, privately companies, they don't have that. And Devolver again, coming back to what I said earlier, Devolver brings this up because they want to become delisted. They're hoping by September 16th, they'll be delisted. And their statement reads this: Devolver has, during this time, navigated a number of operational and market headwinds, including several impairments of underperforming titles amid an increasingly competitive and unpredictable market environment. As a publicly quoted company, Devolver has faced the ongoing challenge of delivering growth in line with market expectations despite those difficult sector conditions, resulting in a valuation disconnect that does not take account of the lifetime and long tail revenue delivery inherent in the video games business. And that highlights, again, coming back, this is right now is not a time to be public in the games industry because there's thousands of games coming out. There's more games released in the first 6 months of this year than last year. Again, I've said in the past, A lot of it's slop. A lot of it is AI slop, and it's not good. Or if it could be good, and I'm not gonna buy it because I don't view AI stuff as art. Hate me if you want. A lot of people feel the same way, but I digress. They highlight the fact that the publicly traded companies have to, as they said, deliver continued growth. And it's often this short term growth. You're looking at every 3 months, you're looking at every 6 months, you're looking at only year time frames, you're looking at very small windows of information. And the games industry, a lot of times, yeah, you're going to get, like, you're looking at how much growth do we have? How much revenue do we get from our current titles? Okay, in 1 month we might sell this much, but over time it could continue to grow. Look at Cyberpunk 2077 or Spider-Man 2 when a associated context comes out, such as Cyberpunk Edge Runners. Cyberpunk 2077 saw an increase in spike. And then obviously it decreased. And then we're seeing again with the season 2 coming out soon. They see an increase in player base, they see sales. Same with happened with The Witcher. When there is a long-term return on video games because once you produce it, you just keep making money from it. But in a publicly traded company, they don't care about how it's going to look in 5 years because your company might not be around in 5 years, right? They're looking at what are you doing right now? And smaller studios that aren't making AAA level games that are more indie single A level, like Devolver Digital, who makes things like Cult of the Lamb, Enter the Gungeon, those kinds of games, or publishes those kinds of games, is a they are publishing smaller experiences that I think are fantastic, but they're not going to bring in the bread like a Halo Master Chief Collection, a Marvel's Wolverine, a Marvel Spider-Man. So your expectations have to change. And again, coming back to, I believe that these smaller publishers, these smaller developers should stay independent. And if you decide, right, if you as a publisher or developer decide to go public, you have to recognize that it's no longer art. You're in publicly traded companies, it's not about art. It's about producing a product to make money. It is. That's the truth. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but you have to recognize the difference in that what you are creating is going to change. The long gone is the ability to go to a Microsoft and say, "Hey, we want to." If you like Microsoft, long gone are the days. Microsoft's going to come to you and say, "Hey, we want to acquire you. We want you to make your games for our service." It's just not going to happen. I hope that we can just continue to see smaller developers make quality experiences like Cult of the Lamb, like Mina the Hollower most recently. How many dudes? I haven't played it yet, but it looks fun. Dusk Fade. These smaller games that are quality, but not this big over the top production. I'm hoping that they can continue to be independent. And it comes back to what I say before. If you want to see these novel experiences continue to be produced, you have to support them. You have to go buy their games. And obviously, I may have contradicted myself a little bit. There is a tail that continues with buying games, and you can buy games on sale, and they're still getting revenue. But you have to consider, if you really love a studio, that you have to support them when the game is released. Give them $20. Mina the Hollower is a great example. I bought it for $20 and I played 30 hours and it was worth every penny. People should go buy Mina the Hollower for $20. They should. It is a fantastic game and it's very accessible to everyone. That was my rant. I don't think games studios should be public. I think it takes away from the art. I think that it changes what the goal of a game is. And especially in today's day and age of using AI to try to cut costs, I think we're going to see a drastic shift in AAA development. And you're going to have to find these smaller publishers and developers who are making super quality games for cheap, or not for cheap, but they're making these smaller experiences, and you're going to have to focus on those. Until next time, keep exploring those games and support small studios. Until next time.